Hello, welcome to the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero, today we are discussing the 2005 film V for Vendetta, starring Hugo Weaving, Natalie Portman, and John Hurt. This is directed by James McTeigue in his first feature-length film, and it was written by the Wachowskis, Lily and Lana Wachowski, based on the graphic novel by David Lloyd. I believe, no, wait, I think I'm wrong on that. Let me just double check who did V for Vendetta.
David Lloyd and Alan Moore.
I thought it was Alan Moore. Okay, sweet. Alan Moore is fantastic as a comic book writer. But anyway, Zero, this is a very popular film. It is currently on the IMDb Top 250 as 159. It has a rating of 8.2. This is our first time both watching this film. So, what did you think of V for Vendetta?
It's an interesting film, especially just with kind of the cultural undertones that it had in it, especially with regards to rebelling against an oppressive government being just the real main overarching theme.
Right. It is interesting to see a movie that is for wide audiences tackle these types of themes, because usually these themes are relegated to either, how do I put this? They're either to documentaries, or if they are feature-length films, they are laser-focused towards one group or one political ideology mostly. So it is interesting to see something that is of popular media tackle these types of themes. And I guess make it digestible for a wide audience is what my thought is when I first watched this. There are definite tones of 1984 in this, especially with John Hurt in a bit of an inspired casting as him being the tyrannical dictator, whereas when 1984 he was the oppressed. I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition. Yeah, what are your thoughts of the film itself, though?
It was interesting with the cinematography, especially with just whenever you had Adam Sutler just sort of making his conference meetings with his subordinates and everything. It definitely had a 1984 feel. Just his face on just like this giant matrix of screens, just sort of barking orders to his subordinates and everything like that. Yeah, just overall had some scenes had some very interesting cinematography and everything. Some of the musical choice real interesting as well too, especially just the use of the Overture of 1812, which as a classical music fan, that one's always an interesting tune, and to see it kind of used a few times in the movie was definitely sort of interesting to me.
Yeah. The references towards band art and band music was interesting as well as a means of rebellion. I was turned off a little by how on the nose everything is, though. But I guess when it's a film that was made for a mass appeal, I guess I kind of expected it, but I was still a little disappointed by it. I am mixed on this movie, to be completely honest. On the one hand, I'm fully aware that this is a film that they wanted to appeal to as wide a net as possible. So there is a lot of stylized action. There is a lot of explosions. A lot of it's a visually arresting film to a certain extent. But and this is my problem also with Watchmen. I'll come out and say right now, I haven't read the graphic novel. I'm not familiar with it. I've heard it's great as well. So I want to just put that in mind. My issue with Watchmen when it came out in the movies is that they forgot to adapt the novel into a film. what they basically did was that they took the comic, the graphic novel, and they just one for one did it exactly as it was in the comic. Now, purists liked that about Watchmen, and I think purists liked that about this movie as well, from what I've read about V for Vendetta. But the issue is with comics is that the way that the art is made, the way that the story has to move along, you have to truncate dialogue to a certain extent and make it appealing enough and make the art good enough to where the art carries the story and the dialogue sometimes is secondary. That was kind of the issue I started having with the film as it was going along. With V, the main character, essentially, I think V would be the main character of the film, who basically speaks in I would call revolutionary dialogue. Essentially, lots of quotations, lots of rhyming, stuff like that. So, and my thought process was, there's a reason why this is like that in the comic, because that's what you have to do to get the point across in a comic without it, without being too verbose. Because if you're too verbose in a comic, you're going to have 60% of the page be all words when you want to have pictures in there as well and art. So that's why it's the dialogue isn't as detailed as it would be in a movie. But they didn't do that in the movie, I guess, to stay true to the comic, and I think it kind of suffers for that a little bit. I had a hard time believing V as a character, and mainly, and I get the theme, as in the theme, basically the symbol is more important than the person. I get that to a certain extent, but you still have to believe that the characters are willing to follow this symbol, this person, to do the things that they do in the film, and I had a disconnect believing it, especially when we get into spoilers. What are your thoughts of that so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting just how just a lot of the focus on the movie is just about more the symbolism versus just thinking of V as like the character who carries through this ideology and everything.
Right.
Unfortunately, just to talk more about that would get into spoilers, but that's just what it is. But yeah, it's kind of interesting just the way how things are set up with the whole populace, basically just under this real domineering veil of security, and everything that Northfire does is for their protection, for the good of the populace and everything like that.
Right.
And as you kind of go along the movie, you kind of see the cracks forming in just Northfire's little regime and everything. All the while, just you've got V sort of trying to dismantle the system and everything.
Right. So, and that's where I come across with the problem with V in this. The believability that a large group of people or a person would follow this person. You're relying on the audience to basically say, yeah, if I was in this place, I would too. Which, sure, of course, is what you would want an audience member to think in this circumstance. But that's overly relying on the person who's watching it to draw that line themselves. I never at any point got a feeling that I could believe that not only Evie, which is Natalie Portman's character, which we'll get to, would want to follow this person, or that much less that, but that any person would take this person seriously and want to follow that person. But I do understand why this is very popular. The reason why is the ideas that are come across in this movie and the things that are said. These are things that if you aren't given these materials, or you're not given these thoughts at like a young age, let's say in high school or in college, I'm generalizing a little bit here, but if you weren't given these ideas or thoughts in like a young age to where it kind of morphed into a thought process later in life, that seeing this movie and having these concepts spoken out to you in a way, I could see why a lot of people would find this appealing and would probably name this as probably one of their favorite movies of all time, because it is dealing with complex notions about governments and people and constituencies when it comes to these things. So I do get why some people would find this to be a fascinating and probably a movie that may change their thinking on certain things. But if you have already thought about this stuff and you've already read things and you've already someone's already expressed these ideas to you, to me it kind of felt like a bullet points to revolution kind of thing, not a deep thoughtful it's not like a deep thoughtful piece of art that will convince you that this is something that should be done. This is more likely of wouldn't it be nice if, or wouldn't it be cool if kind of thing, which I felt was disappointing. Do you agree with that, or do you have a different take on what I'm saying?
I would say that I agree, especially if you don't really have much sort of historical background or context, and maybe your school didn't really drill down hard on stuff like 1984 and things like that. Then, yeah, just I could see V for Vendetta being just kind of fascinating to a sense, because just it goes into very similar themes like 1984, but it goes into a more revolutionary bent, a little harder than 1984.
Right, and it goes into it goes into oppressive states. It goes into the media being a tool for the government. It goes through a lot of populists rising up against the government, basically which is a line of the movie where governments should be afraid of its people, not the other way around. I don't think that's the exact quote that is in the movie, but that is in there. Like I said, like if these thoughts have not crossed your mind, I can see this being something that will change your thought process. Absolutely. But if it hasn't, and I'm gonna guarantee someone is gonna listen to this and go, I have these thought processes, and this movie still blew my mind. I'm like, okay, great, you're cool, whatever. But I can definitely see somebody who, I don't know, maybe is a diehard Djangoistic American fan watching this movie and going, hey, wait a minute. You know, there's some points here that I should think about. You know, like I could see that to a certain extent. So with that, I think it passes. But as someone who's thought about that and probably wants more to chew on, it doesn't do that. I want to give it credit for that, but not a lot of credit. I want to just say, like, the ideas that they're spouting is sound, but it's just the surface level of the idea, which is what I found a little disappointing. It is my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and again, I can agree with that too, because I have a feeling that the graphic novel probably goes into a little bit more detail, but like you mentioned at the start of this recording, just because this is a movie, they likely had to truncate the dialogue and just trim it down to make sure that it fits nicely into the package of a film and everything.
No, it's the exact opposite. With a movie, you can have more verbose dialogue and more descriptive things happen in the movie because then the actors can act it out and it could be done in a different way. Whereas in a graphic novel, you have a limited amount of space to where you can put dialogue and text without it interfering with the art. So
Yeah,
I think it's the exact opposite in that end.
yeah. The reason I say that it may be,
The opposite, really?
and maybe the opposite is,
Okay.
I believe the graphic novel is over 4 volumes. It's either like 4 or 6.
Right.
I'd have to double check, but with that being said, just that's a lot of stuff to just sort of trim down to kind of cherry pick what would be best to be thrown into the movie versus what could probably be just thrown into like a reference in the background or something. Never mind, I stand corrected. The graphic novel is broken into 3 books.
But 296 pages for the graphic novel? Holy shit. That's
Yeah,
beefy. Like, I'm used to graphic,
yeah,
like, I think Watchmen's half that, if I might be wrong, but some of my favorites are like 60, 70 pages. Oh, I'm wrong. Graphic novel of The Watchmen is 448 pages. Wow, I'm way off. Holy shit. Let me check one more
yeah.
thing. Let me check Pride of Baghdad, which is one of my favorite. Anyone who hasn't heard of Pride of Baghdad is about a pack of lions who escape a zoo during the second invasion of Iraq. It's actually a great okay. It's a great graphic novel. It's 136 pages. Okay, I mean, let me check Mouse. Mouse is another great one. If anybody hasn't, Mouse is 159. Okay, so these are beefy stories, essentially. So there is a possibility of what I'm saying is incorrect. So good on you on that, Zero. Good on you with that. So do you have any difference of opinion as to what I'm saying in regards to the themes? Because like I said, I just feel that the themes are done on a surface level where I was expecting maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I'm of the same opinion, but I think personally it may have been just limited due to just the fact that V for Vendetta is quite a beefy graphic novel,
Mm-hmm.
and that they sort of had to kind of cherry pick things that might be interesting or things that they felt that would be best formatted to be interpreted on screen and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's really where my thought on the themes really go, mostly because just there's only so much you can fit in 2 hours versus a beefy 400-page graphic novel for like the complete edition, that is.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we're getting into. I think we're talking less about the quality of the film, and more into what we think might have been the problem with the film itself, the way it was done. But that's interesting. You might be right on that. But okay, we'll move on from there. Performances. Let's start with Hugo Weaving. He was good as the voice of V. I think he was the perfect person to voice V. But when Hugo Weaving is on screen with those 2 minutes without the mask, there is a scene when that happens. It made me believe less in the character because there was a drastic difference in body type when Hugo Weaving is out of how to put this? There is a scene in the film where Hugo Weaving plays a character that sounds exactly like V, but is technically a different character entirely. And his body type is very different to what you see with V. So that threw me off a little bit. Because it's clear to me. I'd be surprised if it turns out that Hugo Weaving was in the costume as V the entire time. I don't think that is the case at all. I think someone else played V as the person, and Hugo Weaving was just the voice, which is fine. Like, I have no problem with that. I think he was perfect as the voice. But when you finally see Hugo Weaving on screen without, it kind of broke the illusion a little bit to me. But I think he was good as the voice.
Natalie Portman as Evie was definitely interesting because, of course, just she's pretty much essentially a fugitive from the law right from the start and everything, especially I guess we're already into spoilers at this point.
Well, don't... Try not to hit the spoilers too hard. But yeah, go ahead and talk about it.
Okay. Mostly because of her background, which we'll go into that during spoilers. But
right.
Just sort of her evolution through just sort of quietly going along with the system to eventually getting to the point of just understanding V's motivations ultimately towards the end and everything was kind of an interesting descent towards that. Though there's a bit of an interesting story arc that does involve V, which I'll get into during spoilers and everything.
Right. I like Natalie Portman as an actress. I think she is fantastic most of the time. The only performance where that she gets praised for that I don't get is Leon the Professional. But I kind of want to, even though I don't think it was that great of a performance, I also think it's unfair to a certain extent to criticize her because she was, I think, 12 at the time when she did the movie. She was good, but I don't think it was that mind-blowing as people would call it. But it was definitely a showcase as to where she would grow into as an actress. She's very good in this, I think. I think she plays the character very well, though, and this will hit the spoilers when we talk about this, I had a big issue towards the middle of the movie with the character. We'll get into that when that happens. The only other performance I want to highlight is John Hurt, who plays the High Chancellor. I forget, Adam Sutler. Sutler. Thank you. He was fantastic as the main villain. Like, he was detestable. He hit the right notes. You believe that he is this like over the top villain, and it's not so over the top that it's ridiculous, but it's over the top enough that you elicits the right reactions. Like, I think I would say he's the performance of the film, to be absolutely honest. But I thought he was fantastic in this one. I think he's the highlight of the movie,
especially since he nails the overlord sort of vibe that he's portraying as the head chancellor of Northfire and everything. So yeah, just bang on, nailed it, especially when he's just chewing out the subordinates, and you've got the whole like matrixed multi-monitor display sort of rendering his face on this giant wall, and you just hear him basically just chewing out his subordinates when just things aren't going right, and he's just like he's just pretty much shouting at them like, damn it, get the job done, you fucking idiots. And it's just like, yeah, he's got the overlord vibe down. Holy shit.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also interesting if you've seen 1984, with him being the lowly bureaucrat in 1984, or then him being who he is in V for Vendetta, there's that interesting juxtaposition that I definitely enjoyed watching. Do you have more you want to talk about that doesn't involve spoilers, or do you want to get into that?
I think everything that I want to get into is going to be spoilers at this point.
Got it. So why don't we get into spoilers? If you haven't watched V for Vendetta, can stop now, go ahead and watch, and come back later. We will start our spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My big problem with the movie that led me to have my biggest issue with the movie is the plot twist. And there's two things that I had an issue with when it regards to the plot twist. One, that there was a plot twist. It was not necessary. And two, what it eventually did to the character Evie in the movie. And to an extent, V. It fit with V, I guess, but what it did to Evie is where I was like, oh, that hurts this character big time. You want to talk about the plot twist? You know what the plot twist I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So involves the death of her old boss. Put the name together. Oh, Gordon Dietrich. So Gordon ends up doing an episode on his talk show where he does a sketch of basically just Adam Sutler being completely humiliated and ridiculed by V skulking around on the set and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hear yakety sax playing in the background and everything. It's a completely silly scene.
Yeah.
And of course, this ends up pissing off Adam Sutler, and he basically has his black bagging kidnapping crew just beat the shit out of Dietrich. And during this whole thing, Evie tries to escape Dietrich's home and ends up being kidnapped by initially what you think is the black bagging crew.
Yeah.
But through this whole arc of just her being completely treated like a prisoner, hair completely shaved off, thrown into a cell, and all this other stuff. Just
waterboarded, tortured.
Yep. Waterboarded, tortured. It gets to a point where just she discovers this sort of, I guess, a story note from a dead prisoner by the name of Valerie, and it's pretty much just Valerie writing her story out, and just Evie sort of kind of picturing the story in her mind and everything, and then of course just after reading this and in between reading the story and being tortured in between, finally just she ends up being threatened with execution of, hey, you need to fess up where V is. If you don't, then we'll execute you. And she's like, I don't know where he is, and whatever, fucking kill me if you want. And then one last time, you've got one of the wardens who's pretty much just begging her, going, just tell them something, just anything. It doesn't matter if it has much impact or not. If you at least say something, at least you'll get some reprieve. And she's like, nope, I don't know and I don't care. Just fucking go and shoot me at this point. And then the warden leaves the cell open. She walks out, and she ends up being kind of bamboozled by the fact that what she walks out into is V's underground lair, and she's like, yo, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, so the twist is that when she gets captured, it's V who captured her, and it was a test to see if she would give him up. There's two issues with this twist. One, it's already pretty much established that Evie didn't know the location of where V's place was. Now, you can probably ascertain to a certain extent that if she was helping V at a certain point in the movie, that she probably figured it out. But the movie doesn't outright say that she knows the location. So there's that. That's one problem. The second problem is then that the torture that she went through is implied, it's said in the movie, that she now has no fear and that she is now ready to basically be part of the revolution. Basically saying that in order for her to basically agree with V and to agree with what he's doing and to be a part of it, she has to have a severe case of Stockholm syndrome in order to actually agree to be a part of it, which completely undermines the character of V and his power over people and his power to actually change minds. Essentially, basically making it sound like, oh, you have to be as bad as the people who are doing this in order to change people's minds to join your cause, is what I got out of it. Which, to me, was just like, that is not a... That's... I saw that, I'm like, wait, what? This doesn't make sense. Like, I guess it kind of does, but it makes sense, but then it turns V not as a righteous hero who is a terrorist but is righteous in his cause, to someone that basically is as bad as the government that he is saying is oppressing him.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of a weird juxtaposition of his righteousness.
Yeah,
and yeah, I kind of took issue with it as well. I was like, yo, that's real fucked up.
Yeah.
That you're literally using the same tactics as the oppressing class just to try to harden Evie the fuck up. Really? That's a real screwed up set of logic there. I'm not sure that works. So I was a bit confused. Yeah. So.
And then the fact that it kills Evie's character at the end of this, because it turns her into basically a victim of severe Stockholm syndrome, to where she decides to go back to wish him good luck on, I guess, what he's doing, to have that final dance, and to help him with his plan. Whereas most people, when they've given the freedom and everything, would be like, fuck this guy, I'm out of here, and I'm leaving this country too, and fuck all y'all, I'm done. Somehow you're supposed to believe that this character, who went through all these traumatic things, who is suddenly realizing how fucked her life is and how she needs to get out as much as possible, is then tortured to the point where then she has freedom and decides to stay in order to help the person that tortured her in the first place? What? It's like, wait a minute. It completely kills Evie at this point. Because now, Evie, either you interpret it as her Stockholm syndrome is so severe that it's the only reason why she's doing this, which then makes her a different sympathetic character and makes V into this horrible, horrible villain that even though he might be doing the right thing, that he is probably worse than the government that he's fighting with, thus takes the message of the movie and puts it down the shitter. Or it turns, it basically, and maybe this is the interpretation, that Evie pretty much loses all of her humanity and becomes the symbol as well as V, so that her feelings, her baggage doesn't matter anymore, and that she's just all about the cause and that's it. Which, at that point, is just like, then what is the point of all of this? Like, if you're saying the only way to get the results that you need is to strip your personhood and become that symbol, is the only way for you to get freedom, then basically what you're saying is there's no such thing as freedom. is what my interpretation of the story is. And when with the way that the film is shot and the way that they try and make V into this hero, it doesn't fit in my opinion, at least when it comes to the themes of the film.
And much like you said, it just clashes with the whole theme of just the oppressed rebelling against the oppressor and everything. Because just during this whole sequence, V is totally oppressing her just to try to harden her the fuck up, and it just kind of confuses me because I'm just like, this is completely antithetical to V's whole message of, we're trying to embolden people to rise up against their oppressors and everything. And here he is using the exact same tactics as the oppressors from Northfire, and it's just like, I just don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah. And when in the beginning, when he saved her, when this all started, you could explain away certain things, like saying, "Oh, he did save her, and now that the government's after her, he is kind of helping her, even though he's pretty much making her a prison of his place at this point." So you can explain away those aspects to a certain extent, even though, it's still kind of bad, but okay, that can be explained away. You can't explain away the fact that he tortures her in this plot twist, that when you take 2 seconds to think about it, you go, wait, what? Like, wait, what now? Hold on. So, Zero, I don't know. I ended up liking the film overall, but I had to really divorce the themes away from the film in order to enjoy it visually. But when you insert the themes back in with what the movie is showing you, there is a clash between what the characters do and the theme of the movie that it is trying to do. Like, it would have been much more interesting to basically, yes, have the quote-unquote succeed, but still make him to be just as bad, just as villainous, and just as deranged as, I would say, as the government, to a certain extent. Basically, playing on the whole thing of the difference between a cop and a villain, a cop and a criminal, is that the cop has the badge. And that's pretty much it. Like, you can do a play off of that, and you'd have an interesting story with interesting themes that you can go by, and make Evie the main character, and have her be the through line through all of it, and connect with her in that certain aspect, to where she gains her independence by realizing that both sides are in the wrong or whatever. But the fact that she ends up being basically V's champion in the end, just, to me, with the themes, ruins the theme of the film. And if it wasn't for the fact that this film was actually a visually striking film, I probably wouldn't like it, is what my thoughts are on that.
And I can certainly understand that, because the movie's got some interesting cinematography.
Yes.
And combined with some of the pivotal points having interesting musical cues and stuff like that, it also kind of helps the film as well too. But yeah, just if the cinematography and music choices were a bit weak, then I could certainly say that I'd probably be in the same opinion as you, that I'd probably feel that the movie might have felt a little bit flat. But since the movie's got great cinematography and great musical choices for some of the pivotal moments, it keeps the film interesting.
And the action scenes aren't that bad either. Like, these are decent action scenes and some good hand-to-hand combat scenes. Like, they're good. They're infrequent, but they're visually appealing. Like, they're not bad. What else do you want to talk about with spoilers? I mean, I got the main thing that was on my mind, and that has been sticking in my head the entire day after I watched the film. So,
I think when the plot starts to kick off against the House of Parliament and everything, where just V ends up shipping just the Guy Fawkes costumes all over the UK and everything.
Yeah.
That got real interesting too, because of course it was part of V's grand plan to kind of sow chaos and everything, especially since Northfire would basically be trying to use their camera systems to try to locate anybody that was that looked like V and just have him shot and imprisoned on sight, because it went completely off the rails just as he expected, especially since there was one scene where just you see a little girl putting on the outfit and sort of playing around and everything, and one of the Northfire secret police just comes out of nowhere, shoots her.
Mm-hmm.
The mask falls off, and you see that it's this little girl who's playing around in it, and it ends up pissing off the populace that they end up sort of ganging up on this secret police officer. And the camera cuts out in just a creative way that it sort of alludes that the secret police officer was likely got the shit beaten out of him for it.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of interesting when that whole thing started to happen, because it was sort of like the final run of that idea, especially since V used that similar idea in the start of the movie when he took over the TV station and everything, and had a whole bunch of the Guy Fawkes costumes shipped to the TV station, and then when he had complete control of the TV station, ended up dressing up a whole bunch of the TV station staff in the Guy Fawkes costumes to sort of masquerade as escape and sow chaos and everything.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. Did you believe V could do what he eventually did in the movie, which was basically ignite a populace to make him so popular that they would do the things that they did, which is basically everybody in England, and I mean literally everybody in England, or in London, I guess this is set in, crowded the streets in Guy Fawkes masks in the risk of being shot at, tries to overrun the army to witness the eventual explosion of Parliament. Did you believe he had that charisma to pull that off in the movie? Did you have to stretch your credulity? Did you have to stretch your belief in order to believe that this is possible according to what was shown in the movie?
There was a little bit of stretching that was done, but I think it was built out pretty well, because of course in the beginning, when he takes over the TV station, of course, he makes this grand speech and everything, and of course you see a lot of older people just sort of blowing it off, going, whatever, fucking terrorist trash. But you see some of the kids who are watching the initial message he puts out and everything, and they're just like, the kids are just kind of like, yeah, fuck the system and everything. Yeah. And as you kind of go along, he starts kind of sowing the message that, just he's doing what he can to tear down the system and everything, and just it's a slow going process if he does it alone, but he's trying to get people inspired to sort of follow the message that he's trying to spread and everything. And you kind of start seeing people sort of question the narrative, especially just with some of the choices of the people that he ends up killing in revenge for the medical torture that he went through and everything. And then towards the end, it seems a bit believable, albeit you have to stretch it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But just you see when you see everyone sort of putting on the Guy Fawkes outfits and sort of kind of coming together as sort of a giant group to march towards Parliament and everything. It seems believable. Granted, you have to kind of stretch your imagination a little bit, but at least that was my thought on it.
I think there must have been something cut that made the connection more, I guess, more believable. Because when it got to the point where the masks were being sent and everything, like you could tell what was going to happen, but I had a pretty hard time believing that to a certain extent. It just felt like the connection between the populace getting pissed and V's actions were kind of done perpendicularly, like they were happening irregardless of each other. Like it just seemed like there was no connection to a certain extent, and that it just so happened that these two things aligned to where the populace was pissed enough. Oh, here's this guy that's doing something. Yeah, why not? Why don't we just wear this as a sign of protest? Is kind of where it felt like. It didn't feel like, to me, that the populace as it was portrayed in the movie were really behind V and wanted V to succeed. It felt more like a how do I put this? Yeah, like you said, you had to stretch in order to believe this fully, and it just didn't. Nothing really, especially how the film portrayed it, because the film made it seem like, basically said that the populace believed that he died in the initial raid in the TV studio, even though there were some that was saying that's a load of bollocks. That's not what happened. Like, that's kind of bullshit. But there was no mention of the fact that people were still thinking about it, were still affected by it, still believed it, still had their minds thought process on V as a character and V as the person that was leading this. I didn't feel a single connection to that. It just felt like like a contrivance to a certain extent, where in order for the theme to fit, all the populace had to wear Guy Fawkes masks just to have that connection. So that was my feeling on it, at least. I'm a little more, I feel more on the sense that it was not believable at all than I think you do on this. Anything more to add on that, or anything more you want to talk about with spoilers?
I think I am good on spoilers.
Okay, so let's get into final thoughts. Zero, go right ahead.
It's V for Vendetta is a fairly entertaining movie. Granted, feel that personally, the movie may be a little bit truncated, considering how beefy the visual novel is at a whopping 400 pages and everything. But ultimately, just if stuff like 1984 fascinates you, and be it if you've only seen the movie or if you've read the book, and maybe to a light degree, if you've read the novel Fahrenheit 451, then V for Vendetta might be a fun watch. But yeah, if you haven't had exposure to 1984 or Fahrenheit 451, the movie's probably going to be an entertaining watch, though. Just the whole idea of revolution might seem just very, very interesting, especially if you've had no context to 1984 or Fahrenheit 451.
Right. No, I agree with you there. Like, if you have no context, well, I can't see anybody not having context for 1984 anymore. But if you're definitely not inclined to think that way, this is a movie that could change your mind. I agree with you there. I'm a little more cool on my thoughts on this movie. Although I will say, I did end up liking it. I think the message is muddled in bad writing when it comes to the plot twist and to what the characters eventually do in the middle of the film. It is a visually arresting film. It plays around with those ideas to a certain extent that makes it entertaining and watchable, but I don't necessarily agree with the praise that it's gotten. Probably something we should have talked about, and I'll use my final thoughts to talk about this, Zero. This is 159 out of the top 250 in IMDb. It has a rating of 8.1. These are the films that it's beaten. And get this: Dial M for Murder, The Secret in Their Eyes, Howl's Moving Castle, Train Spotting, Gran Torino, Fargo, Prisoners, My Neighbor Totoro, Catch Me If You Can. All of these, Blade Runner, On the Waterfront, all of these movies are considered not as good as V for Vendetta. And I gotta disagree with that, like, vehemently. I do like V for Vendetta. There are other films that do these what do you call it? These themes a lot better. 1984, for example. Brazil is another one in a comedic sense that I think does it a lot better than V for Vendetta. So I'll end it on that. What do you think about V for Vendetta beating those films, Zero?
Yeah, that's... Oh, God, that's...
I
mean, I'm struggling to find words.
I mean, here's the thing with the IMDb. I mean, this is... anybody who has an IMDb account can rate movies. So there could be people who only rate 5 or 6 films on their profile and give them all 10s, and that could be a possibility. I think that's how The Dark Knight is number 2 on this list, which I think is just, again, Dark Knight's a good film, but not that good. That could be something like Casablanca. But it just seems like, God, it beat Wild Strawberries. Good Lord. It just seems to me that I think, and this is my thought, I could be wrong. I think what makes V for Vendetta popular is the themes, not the movie itself. And when this film is done pretty well, it's visually appealing. And when it's done in a way that is digestible for the masses, I can see why it is popular. It is not entirely thoughtful. It's not deep. It's not really thought-provoking. But it presents an idea in a way that is thought-provoking, that people who I would say aren't interested in those films normally, when it's fed to them in a certain way that will appeal to them, that it will resonate in a profound way. I think is what makes V for Vendetta a popular film that is loved to a lot of people.
Oh yeah, and I can definitely agree there that I think just the presentation of the themes is likely why just the movie gets so much love, even though just there are some points that just kind of make things fall apart, especially the whole plot twist bit.
All right, Zero. At this point, we would get into the end of the podcast, but before we go, I'd usually have a question for you, but fuck that noise, because we had a big announcement that happened today. And when Criterion Collection has an announcement, because I'm a big Criterion head, and I'm trying to get Zero to get into the addiction with me, they made a huge announcement today about a movie that's coming in November. Zero, do you want to talk about what that big announcement was?
Yeah, it was a Criterion Collection version of the movie WALL-E by Pixar.
Right. This is huge news for people who are into the Criterion Collection. If you don't know what the Criterion Collection is, it is a boutique label that takes important contemporary classic films and little-seen international or cult films, gives them a proper Blu-ray or 4K release, packs them with special features and really good artwork, and sells those discs to, I would say, more along the lines film buffs that want to have those special types of features and collection. There is a reason why this is huge news to people from Criterion, and that is because if they can get a company like Disney, who is incredibly protective of their properties, especially Pixar movies, essentially Criterion could probably get almost any film studio to get something from their catalog and put it in Criterion. Like, this is huge, to my opinion, at least. What do you think about the announcement?
I think the announcement was likely timed because today was Disney Plus Day. So I think that was partly why this announcement sort of came up out of the blue. On top of all the other stuff that was talked about for Disney Plus and everything. But with Disney having one film in the Criterion, getting the Criterion Collection treatment, maybe this is the cynic in me talking, but I could totally see just Disney exploiting this for their whole unvaulting gimmick on when they'll take a classic animated film and they'll be like, hey, we've liberated it from the vault and we're doing a limited run for it, and just after the run is done, then we are locking this film back in the vault, and if you didn't get a hard copy of it on whatever the premiere format of the day is, then sucks to be you.
I mean, but that's what, when it comes to Criterion Collection movies, it's what a lot of the U.S. studios does. A recent example is that there was a Criterion Collection version of the movie Nashville, and Paramount pulled that out of the Criterion Collection, and it's no longer sold now from there as well. A lot of studios do this, so this is not something that is exclusive to Disney. Although Disney in the 90s did that a hell of a lot. Like, they would release, I believe, they would release one of their cartoons, and then in 2 years' time, they would say, before the 2 years is up, they'd say, oh, it's going to the Disney Vault, so if you want it, you better buy it now. And it would force people to buy the movie at $20 as the price was around the time, and then they would take the film out, and you would be able to get it again. That was basically what Disney did all the time. So this is not something new when it comes to that. I've heard some people think that this could be the out to get some of Disney's more controversial films to be released on Blu-ray and 4K for film collectors. Do you know a little bit about Disney's more controversial films?
Not too much.
There is one that I've heard that people are like, oh my God, this could be the time that Disney finally allows somebody to release Song of the South. And I want to throw cold water on that one because Criterion Collection has made great pains the past couple of years to get a lot of black creators and a lot of black films to be in the collection. They did Menace to Society. They've done Devil in the Blue Dress, Love and Basketball. Like they've really wanted to highlight black creators in a big way in their collection. They just announced Malcolm X just recently. For them to do Song of the South would be not a good move on Criterion. Let me tell you what Song of the South is. Song of the South is set in what is believed to be Reconstruction South after the Civil War, where the main character is a black person named Uncle Remus, and he is believed to be a former slave who stayed with his slave masters to live on the farm. And all he does is tell stories to the two children, tells Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear stories to the children. And he's portrayed as a person who is only living joy that he has is to tell Brer Rabbit stories to little white children. And that's essentially the character. And this is where the song Zippity Doo Dah became canonized in Disney. And Disney, after it was released, I don't think it was ever released on VHS. It might have been. But it's never been released since its theatrical run. Because the NAACP and a lot of civil rights groups hated this fucking film. But like Disney heads and film buffs have been curious to see this film, but Disney will never release it. For those of you thinking that this is going to lead to Criterion releasing this film, no, that's not going to happen. Just stop. It will never happen. So, my thought. What are your thoughts on that, Zero?
Yeah, that would be one hell of a spicy choice for a Criterion Collection film to put to print. So I'm with you on that one. That one just might be a little too spicy to go. All right, let's go. I mean, especially with the fact that just they went with kind of a safe choice with Wally and everything.
Right.
So yeah, I don't see just a sudden flip and where they're just gonna flip around and go, hey, let's go with something spicy and see what happens. No, there's just no way.
No, not at all. My feeling of it, like a lot of people that were thinking Song of the South is a possibility, is because Criterion has films like Pink Flamingos, Salo. Oh my God, Salo is just sweet movie. Highly controversial, objectionable films that have been banned in certain countries due to what's in the film. Salo is particularly nasty, but they thought, hey, if they can have that movie, they can certainly have Song of the South. And I just want to say no, that's not happening. As objectionable as Salo is, they are not going to want to touch Song of the South. I wanted to just throw that out there because I can only imagine the shitstorm if they say, not only are we going to put Song of the South, we're going to update it to 4K, give this lovely box art and special features. I think people would be upset by that. So I don't think that's going to happen. What my hope and prayer is that Criterion finally decides to put more animated films in their collection, because they only have, aside from Wall-E, which is coming in November, they have Fantastic Mr. Fox, they have Jellyfish Eyes, which sucks, and there's another one that I'm blanking on. Shit, I forgot what the other one was. There's one more, and I blanked. So, but my hope is that they'll do something like, say, the works of Satoshi Kon. Like, I think would be like Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, like something like that. Or End of Evangelion. Or Allegro Non Troppo. Like something like those. That I haven't seen Allegro Non Troppo, which is because it's hard to find. But I think that would be an interesting thing that they would probably do. Hell, even if they do heavy metal, which I would be against. But if they do heavy metal, like, okay, fine. Sure, whatever. But hey, if they release The Iron Giant, I'd be just as thrilled. I'd buy that again. Fuck yeah, I'd do that. Like, you're an animated film liker, right? I mean, there's some that you'd probably be interested in, right?
There is one, but mostly it's because of the fact that just any copies of the VHS tape are likely antiquities at this point. But the Hans Christian Andersen version of The Little Mermaid, that would be something I would love to see the Criterion treatment. I don't think it'll ever happen because Disney pretty much has a stranglehold on the Little Mermaid IP, even though it's technically in the public domain.
Yeah.
But would love to see that one be given a Criterion edition sort of thing, because I know my sister owned the VHS many years ago, and I know a few years ago, just out of curiosity, I was like, I wonder if that was ever remastered onto DVD or anything. Nope, just absolutely nothing outside of just the original VHS release.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I mean, there are other animated films that I think a lot of people, especially recent ones, that they would like to see get that treatment. But yeah, my hope is that Criterion says, okay, let's start getting some more animated films in here, which is my hope. Angel's Egg is the other one that I was thinking of. God, would love to see Angel's Egg. But yeah, that would be interesting. All right, Zero. Well, we are at the end of this episode. Oh my God, this is a long episode. Wow. Okay, so we're at the end of this episode. But before we go, we're going to talk about the next film we're going to see. Zero, you decided what it is. What are we going to watch?
A Beautiful Mind.
The 2001 Ron Howard directed film that got him his Best Director Oscar, starring Academy Award winner Russell Crowe in his Academy Award winning role, Jennifer Connelly in her Academy Award winning role, Ed Harris, and Christopher Plummer. I saw this in the theaters when it came out in 2001. I really liked it back then. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out seeing it again. So, yeah. There we go. With that, Zero, that'll be the end of this episode of the Capital Games Movie Club. Tune in next week. We watch the 2001 Ron Howard film A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, and Ed Harris. And with that, I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we will talk to you next week.